I stood on my own porch, coffee mug in hand, watching to police officer Sapro, with expressions that told Meth he'd rather be anywhere else. Behind them, across the manicured street of Focage Estates, stood a woman with bleached blonde hair and arms crossed so tightly she might have been holding her sphay together. Her smug smile stretched wider with each step Theophacers took toward me. "Sir, we received a report about a squatter Athos's address," the younger officer said, pulling out his notepad. "Can you provide identification and proof of residency?" I set my coffee down slowly, making eye contact with the woman across this street. Patricia Holbrook, the Hope resident who'd been making my life miserable for the past 2 weeks. She had an idea she was about to learn the most expensive lesson of her life. 3 weeks earlier, I'd inherited a portfolio of 12 rental properties from my late Uncle Edward. 8 of them sat right here in Oakage Estates, including the one I was standing in front of, and ironically Theon Patricia lived in. Uncle Edward had been a quiet investor who kept his nurship hidden behind a property management company. I decided to move into Unit 47 to oversee renovations personally. I kept the same low profile. Maybe that was my mistake. My first encounter with Patricia happened on day 3. I was unloading paint cans for my 10-year-old pickup truck when she marched over, clipboard in hand. "Excuse 'em," she said in a tone that suggested she'd never excused herself for anything in her life. "I don't recognize you. Are you on the approved vendor list?" Straightened up, wiping my hands on my work jeans. "I'm not a vendor, I live here." Her eyes narrowed as she scanned him from head to toe, taking in my paint-splattered clothes and scuffed boots. "Ich know every resident in this neighborhood. You definitely don't live here. This unit belongs to Evergreen Property Management." "That's right," I said, trying to keep my voice friendly. "And I'm the only people authorized to be here are registered residents and approved contractors," she interrupted, tapping her pen against that clipboard. "Since you're neither, you need to leave immediately or I'll have it removed." I could have explained everything right then. Could have told her I owned Evergreen Property Management. I collected rent from her every month, that the house shet righted, like her personal castle actually belonged to me. But something in her condescending tone made me pause. "I have every right to be here," I said simply. She huffed and stormed off. Andy figured that would be the end of it. I was wrong. The next morning, I found a bright orange notice taped to my door. "Warning, unauthorized occupancy. You have 24 hours to provide a proper documentation to the HOA board office. Immediate action." It was signed with Patricia's loopy signature, an unofficial-looking HOA seal. I crumpled it up and went back to painting. 2 days later, my trash cans weren't emptied. When I called the service, they said the HOA had reported unauthorized bins at my address. I had to spend an hour on the phone, sorting it out. Then came the parking violations. Every morning, a new ticket appeared on my truck, citing increasingly creative infractions. Vehicle exceeds cleanliness standards, improper tire alignment with curb, unauthorized make and model, Forney borehood aesthetic. On day 7, Patricia confronted me again, this time with 2 other board members, flanking her like bodyguards. I was installing new light fixtures on my porch when they approached. "You're still here," she said, making it sound like an accusation. "Still living in my home?" "Yes," I replied, not looking down for me ladder. "It's not your home," her voice pitched higher. "I've checked with Evergreen Property Management. You're in it on any lease agreement. You're trespassing." I climbed down slowly, meeting her glare with a calm smile. "Did you speak with the owner?" "Ah!" "I don't need to speak with the owner. Ich know the property manager, Janet Mills, and she's never heard of you." Patricia waved a printed email triumphantly. She confirmed there's no active lease for Unit 47. She was right about that. Janet manageth rentals, but I hadn't told her I was moving in yet. I'd been meaning to update her, but Patricia's harassment had made me curious about how far she'd take this. "I suggest you pack up whatever you've stolen and leave before I involve the authorities." Patricia contented. This is a respectably gerb. "Not a shelter for drifters." The board member to her left, an elderly man named Harold, shifted Duncombe Fortley. "Patricia? Perhaps Westhold? Should what? Harold? Let vagrants move into our community?" Let property values plummet because we're too polite to act? She turned back tone. You have until tomorrow morning, I'm calling the police. That night, Fanley called Janet and had her pull the records for Oakage Estates. What I found was interesting. Patricia had been late on rent 4 times in the past year. She had also filed 12 complaints about various neighbors, resulting in over $30,000 in HOA fines that went straight into the board's discretionary fund that, according to the financial records, had been used for Patricia's personnel and saping project and a suspicious number of board dinner meetings at expensive restaurants. I decided to let her call the police. In fact, I was counting on it. Which brought me to this moment, standing on my porch with 2 increasingly confused officers, while Patricia watched from across the street like a vulture waiting for its meal. Off course. Officers, I said, pulling out my wallet, as though I should mention this is my property. The older officer examines my driver's license. Mr. David Garrison, and you claim to own this unit? It's not just this unit, I said loud enough for Patricia to hear. I own 8 properties in this neighborhood through Evergreen Property Management, including Nate 47 here and Unit 23 across the street. Patricia's smug expression flicked. Unit 23 was her address. That's impossible, she called out, marching over. I know the owner of Evergreen, Edward Blackwood. He would never was my uncle, I interrupted. Passed away last month and left of everything. To me, including your rental agreement, Patricia. The color drained from her face like Simeona had pulled a plug. You're lying. I pulled out my phone and showed the officers the digital copies of Thedids, the inheritance documents, and my ownership. Papers for Evergreen Property Management. They examined them carefully while Patricia sputtered behind them. Seems to be in order, the younger officer said. Ma'am, it appears you've made a false report, but he never said owned. I didn't know, Patricia's voice cracked, 'cause you never asked. I said, you just assumed I didn't belong here because I don't drive a luxury car or wear designer clothes while doing manual labor on my own property. Officers exchanged glances. Mr. Garrison, would you like to file a harassment complaint? E pretended to consider it. Not yet, but I will be documenting any further incidents. After the officers left with a warning to Patricia about false reports, she stood frozen on my lawn. 2 had no idea. I know, I said. That is a problem. You see someone who doesn't fit your image of who belongs here and immediately assume the worst. How many other people have you harassed like this? She didn't answer, but her silence spoke volumes. That evening, I sent Patricia a formal notice through per channels. It detailed every violation she committed. Harassment of a tenant, ironically myself, misuse of HOA authority, filing false reports, and several lease violations, including gun authorized, modifications to her unit that I discovered in the records. I also sent notices to the entire HOA board calling for an emergency meeting to discuss multiple irregularities in the discretionary fund spending. Patricia tried to do damage control. She showed up at my door the next morning, her previous arrogance replaced with desperation. David, Mr. Garrison, you think we got off on the wrong foot? We didn't get off on any foot, said you decided. I was beneath you and acted accordingly. I was just trying to protect the neighborhood, she pleaded. You understand, don't you? We have a standards to maintain. Funny thing about standards, I said. I've been reviewing the HOA bylaws. Did you know that using association funds for personal landscaping is considered an ism, or that filing false police reports against residents is grounds for immediate removal from the board? Her face went white again. What do you want? I want you to attend the emergency board meeting tomorrow night. And I want you to explain to everyone exactly how I've been running things. The meeting was held in the community center, and word had spread. Nearly every resident showed up, including several who really attended. I sat in the back, letting the board's own investigation speak for itself. Harold, the elderly board member seemed uncomfortable with Patricia's behavior, led the inquiry. The $30,000 in fines, the misused funds, the pattern of harassment against anyone Patricia deemed undesirable, it all came out. When it was Patricia's turn to speak, she tried to justify everything. I've kept property values up. I've maintained order. You all benefited from my leadership? You mean your dictatorship? Samia echoed out. A woman named Linda stood up. You'll fine me $500 because my daughter's bicycle was visible from Thess Street for 10 minutes.
8.
You tried Tovik the Washingtons. Because their grandson's car was too old when heavy-sided, another resident added. One buy-in, Patricia's victim spoke up. And through it all, I stayed silent, letting the community she'd terrorized have a their say. Finally, Harold called for a vote of no confidence. It was unanimous. Patricia looked around the room, searching for a single ally and finding no. Her gaze landed on me. This icy our fault, she hissed. I stood up. No, Patricia. This is accountability, something you've avoided for too long. It earned to address the room. As the owner of 8 properties in this neighborhood, I want to assure every owner thought. I'm committed to fair treatment for all residents. I'll be reviewing all fines issued in the past 2 years and refunding any that were excessive or unjustified. The room erupted in applause. Patricia tried one last desperate move. Fine, I'll resign quietly. Just please don't evict me. I've lived here for 15 years. I'm not going to evict you. Said you're going to honor your lease like any other tenant, but there will beckonges. First, you'll pay back every cent of association funds you misused. Second, you'll write a formal apology to every resident you've harassed or fined unfairly. That's hundreds of people. Then you'd better get started. The county prosecutor, who'd been invited, totened after the financial irregularities share were discovered. Step it forward. Actually, ma'am, you'll need to deal with me first. Embezzlement of HOA funds is a felony. You're looking at potential jail time and significant fines. Patricia's knees buckled. Jail, but how much in fines? Based on $1,000 in misappropriated funds, you could face up to 5 years in prison and fines up to $75,000. She collapsed into a chair, her face a mask of shock and disbelief. The woman wielded her tiny amount of power like a weapon, finally understood what real consequences looked.